Good morning and welcome to this week's IGTV. Today I'm talking about your relentless teenager who is like, pretty please, please, please can I? And the begging and pleading until they wear you down and get their way. How do you possibly set boundaries with a teenager who you feel like they're coming at you and it's exhausting. It's exhausting. And sometimes you end up giving in just to end the exhaustion. But then you don't want to do that either because you're like, well, wait a minute, I got to have boundaries and build respect. And then you're like stuck in the middle, or maybe then you go too far either to like, no, this is the boundary. It's not, no. And so now there's lowering respect that way, or you've given in too many times because you just wanted to end the relentless barrage. And now you feel resentful because there's less respect that way. Okay, I'm going to dive into this. We're going to talk about how to deal with your relentless teenager and set boundaries that actually work. And how, like, where is the line? How do you navigate these years where they just want what they want and they are so driven and obsessed with it that they like won't let it go. They literally won't let it go. So my name is Allie Payne. I am a certified life coach, certified relationship systems coach. I have been working with parents of tweens, teens, and young adults for 18 years now to help end the painful disconnection, baffling blow-ups, and stressful silences, to build more open relationships based on mutual trust and respect. And this is a topic, this relentless teenagers, this please thing came up in a conversation with a mom the other day. And I thought, no, you know what? We need to talk about this, especially as we head into summer. I need to stop touching my camera. Especially as we head into summer and your teenager maybe has more time and a little bit more freedom, and you are just getting the barrage, the constant barrage every single day. Please, can I go do this? Can I go? Why? Why can't I? Can I go? Why? But why? But then you said, and all of the things. Okay. Let's take a breath because this is a tough one, this setting boundaries. So the first thing I want to say is I want to tell you two reasons that this happens. Okay. It happens for two distinct reasons. The first is on your teenager side, okay? Is their brain is the adolescent brain is not an adult brain. The adolescent brain is going through the second and final growth and development phase. Growth and development, yes. Physical growth, yes. It actually is like physically growing, and development stage of our human lifetime. So it's massive, okay? As part of that process, they become more emotionally run. They're run more by emotions, and they don't yet have the executive function to perhaps filter or pump the brakes a little bit, okay? So let's just say that. When they want something, their brains are coming from a need for freedom and autonomy. They want autonomy. To have agency, like, Mark Twain, to be the captain of their soul. They want to be able to have free will and choice when they've come from being a child where pretty much, you were in charge of like what they ate, what they wore, the play dates, when they got picked up, registering them for sports or camps, whatever. Like you were the manager, like you really were the manager of their life. Yeah, awesome. But now you're moving to more of the consultant, and they want a lot more autonomy and freedom. And so this is partly where this relentless thing comes in, because they want to be making their own choices, because part of their brain development is differentiation. They want to be different than you. In fact, they will sometimes literally push against exactly what it is that you told them to do just for the sake of being different. They're individuating. They are defining their own beliefs and values, which may be different than yours, but they're figuring out who they are in the world. What do they stand for? And so this is all part of this need for autonomy, to be their own person. They don't want to be your shadow or your mini-me anymore. because they're not learning to human, they're learning to adult. And that's not necessarily going to look the way you did or the way you would want it, okay? So this need for, this drive for autonomy is so big that it can create this relentless begging, pleading, the please, can I, all of this in the face of boundaries that you already set. And you're like, I'm sorry, hang on a second. We already discussed this. Like, we already had this discussion. And the answer was no, or I already gave you my answer. Why are you coming back to me, with all of these things? So the reason that this happens on your part, okay, is because if you're like me, you were raised in more authoritarian home. So what your parents said was the answer. What your parents said is what you did. Now, if you're a bit of Gen Xer, the joke about Gen Xers is that we kind of raised ourselves because we were the beginning of the latchkey kids and we were the beginning of double income families where we'd come home and there wasn't a parent there. We got ourselves to sports and activities. So look, if you're Gen Xer, I get it, okay? As am I. But this whole boundary thing is that you're trying to not redo the authoritarian style, because I said so, it is what it is, that hard, fast line that maybe you grew up with where you didn't have a voice or you didn't have perhaps as much opportunity to express your own autonomy as what you would have liked. This isn't shade against your parents, okay? So, meh. And you might have already tried that, but because that feels really rigid, maybe it feels really rigid. It's not the kind of relationship you want to have with your teenager where they're bringing things to you, because we know scientifically, like the more rigid and strict you are, actually the less your teenager brings things to you and the more likely they are to just lie and hide things. So maybe, and this is so common for all you incredible, caring, courageous parents. Yes, you, who want to create something different for your teenagers, for the way that they were raised. Again, not trying to throw shade against your parents. You just want to do it more authentically, what feels authentic to you. And so you go the other way, which is normal. You do the full 180-degree swing, is from authoritarian, strict, rigid boundaries. I said what I said because I said so. Don't ask me again, all that kind of stuff, to wanting to hear your teenager and why they want what they want. And like you want to engage them in this, like what feels like a more open kind of negotiation, right? But because you and I were not taught this, when you do that 180 swing and you go over to this like significant amount of negotiation, what's ending up happening is you probably find yourself giving up or giving in more because your teenager's so freaking relentless that they literally won't stop. And it's exhausting. It is emotionally and mentally exhausting. And so now you find yourself that you've given in maybe one too many times, and now that doesn't feel right either. And I just want to say again, that is totally normal. It's totally normal to go from that 180 swing of full authoritarian and control to passive or permissive, where you're trying to connect. Neither one we know scientifically actually works. But when your brain only knows one side and your brain's thinking, well, I want to do different. I want to create a different experience for my kids than I had. And I want to have more like open conversation and involve them, and hear what's important to them, etc. Your only thing your brain knows from different is 180 opposite. Different is opposite in your brain. If it doesn't have a specific, clear anchor to stop halfway. So that's what I'm going to get a little more detailed in right now. Okay. So your teen's coming at you and I was relentless. Oh my Lordy. My poor mother, I was relentless as a teenager. so relentless, my need for autonomy. And I grew up in a very strict home, which was like quite normal at the time, right? So that's the two reasons why it's happening. There's your teen's brain need for freedom and autonomy, okay? And then there's you either trying to do what it is that you learned or you're trying to shift, but because nobody tells us how to do this, right? We're like, where's the middle ground? Like, I don't know how to do this. And also not knowing actually what a boundary is, because what you and I learned was a boundary is actually not what a boundary is at all. Just saying. So that leaves you kind of like feeling confused, maybe like, how do I hear my teen and not like be a brick wall, right? Okay. This is exhausting. I just want to say that this is wildly exhausting. I had a mom tell me that her teenager literally went into this like relentless negotiation, I guess I'm going to call it, for like an hour and a half. That's what I did with my eyes. What? You do not need to listen to this for an hour and a half. Because what ends up happening is you're training your teenager. You're telling me, but my teenager, like, they just wear me down. It's exhausting. No, you're allowing your teenager to wear you down. Since when do you have to participate in an hour and a half conversation of begging, pleading, all of the arguments and reasons why, and I'm not saying their arguments and reasons for why they want you to change their mind are wrong. I'm not saying that. I'm saying teenagers, their need for autonomy is so great that they become relentless. They are relentless. It's the way you respond to that relentlessness that is going to change this exhausting cycle that's actually eroding respect between you and your teen. Because you're either eroding it by being the brick wall, because maybe you've gone over here to permissive or passive and they've gotten their way and it hasn't gone really well, which also then you feel disrespected. So either they feel disrespected or you feel disrespected. They're trying to get freedom. You're trying to keep them safe. They want autonomy. They think you don't trust them. It's like constant, okay? It's constant. So here's what I said to the mom and a couple tips that I want to share with you, okay? And maybe you've heard me talk about some of this in some of my videos, etc. That effective boundaries are actually a conversation to some degree. To a degree, they are a conversation, okay? Because teens are and need to, we know this, they need to develop their own executive function by having certain appropriate levels of autonomy in order to make their own decisions, in order to learn what is a good choice. We know that. And does that feel freaking scary over here as a parent when you're trying to keep them safe and you're not sure if you can trust them? Yes, it does. But we also know that if they're not allowed to make decisions on their own and fail before they leave the home, there's going to be a lot more of it after. A lot more. Because they weren't allowed to fail at home and have you as their mentor to be like, all right, let's debrief. Like, how'd that go? Right? Like, that was a little questionable, a little sketch. Maybe let's not do that again, okay? So when your teenager hears no, your teenager may be explosive. They may be highly reactive. They're allowed to be. Your teenager is allowed to be unhappy, displeased, angry with your no. They're allowed, okay? And even though you might be uncomfortable with their no, doesn't mean you need to change your mind. You don't need to be a brick wall, but you can empathize and validate with them being upset with not getting what they want. Yeah, I know that's, and offer the empathy and validation while not changing your mind. That's not a brick wall, because you're actually still maintaining the connection. You're hearing what's important to them, why they wanted what they wanted. You're being over there with them in that disappointment and what they wanted, even though you're not changing your mind. So that's step number one, okay? Number two is when your teenager begins to do the begging and pleading, it doesn't mean they're begging and pleading because you made a bad decision. It doesn't mean they're begging and pleading because maybe I'm being too strict. Am I being too strict? Should I maybe, No, it doesn't mean any of that. Teenagers are going to beg and plead, and they're going to be relentless, and they're going to want to bargain and negotiate every freaking thing. Again, I was awful. I was good at this part, but I was relentless times like capital letters, okay? When your teenager is doing that, your only job is to do one thing. And it's not what you think. It's not actually listen ad nauseum. No. They get like tops 5 minutes. Tops. You set a time limit. They get tops 5 minutes to offer a renegotiation or why they would like this boundary changed. And then you stop. You stop it there and say, okay, thanks for sharing that. And then you walk away. And you say, okay, thanks for those arguments. Thanks for that. I didn't realize some of this thing. I appreciate knowing more information. I'm going to think about it. But then you also have to tell them when you're going to get back to them. And you better keep your word. The reason you end the negotiation right there is because that is exactly where it goes off the rails. Because you start to feel angry and resentful that they're not being grateful for the fact that you even were willing to consider whatever they first asked, and maybe like set a boundary around it, that you're still like, because it feels like risky for you to, whatever. And so they're pushing. And because they're pushing and you allow them to continue to push for like an hour and a half, okay, your brain is going into exhaustion. You're going into fight or flight. You're getting angry. You're getting resentful. You're not feeling respected. So it is very likely in that moment, you're going to go back to being a brick wall, which we also know scientifically does not work. That connection is the greatest influence you will ever have with your teenager. Yeah, connection, not control, connection. So in that moment, you start getting angry, you're starting to react because you've let this go on too long. Or you're going to lay down the doormat because you're exhausted and you just want it to end, and you go right back over to passive. And then you let them have what they want because you're trying to be nice, you're trying to not be controlling, you're trying to connect, you're trying to give them a chance, like, okay, I hear what you're at, cool. Okay, so that's the biggest problem right there. You've now taught your teenager that all they need to do is start begging, pleading, bargaining, and being relentless, and they'll get what they want. So is it really your teenager? I know this. I did this. And I did sometimes get my way changed. Now, sometimes it was just because I was literally negotiating. I thought that they were being like too much of a brick wall, okay? The problem isn't whether you be the brick wall in that moment or you try and be their bestie because you're trying to be nice and you're exhausted and you just want it to end. The problem is that you didn't end the conversation after the first 5 minutes and walk away and say, thanks for that extra detail, that information, for letting me know more. I'm going to get back to you. That's the problem. It's not necessarily which choice you made, but that's going to be the outcome. You're going to pick one of the two. Okay? So your teenager is going to learn. You're teaching their brain that when they go into this relentless mode, you get off ground. They get you just enough off ground that now you're unsure of whatever your value or position was. And they know where your line is to where you're going to get pissed. And maybe you'll get pissed and go brick wall a couple times. But if they keep going, you're teaching them that eventually they can wear you down and it will work. So that behavior is going to work. So they're going to do more of this relentless hour-and-a-half negotiating conversation because they know they can wear you down. That is why you need to end the conversation after 5 minutes, tops, and say, I'll think about it and come back, because you need to leave. So your brain's not hijacked. You need to go revisit, why was this boundary important to you? What was the value behind it? What was it about feeling respected and helping them to also feel respected? Because a boundary is about mutual respect. It's not about control, which is what you and I were taught. But again, surprise, it's not about control. You're going to get off ground. So you need to go gather yourself, think it through, talk it over. Maybe you need to also talk to a co-parent or your partner about it, or somebody else involved, whatever. Oops, sorry. So that you get back on ground. And then when you go back to your teenager, which is when you said you would, you're not off ground. You are anchored again. Okay? Teenagers they are highly intuitive and emotionally sensitive. And if you can imagine like a boundary being not a boundary, perhaps that's a bad way to say it. If you can imagine like your certainty being like a square, like a pizza box, and you're standing on like a pizza box, okay? Your teenager knows when your toe even gets close to the edge. And I can tell you for free, they know how to push your foot close to the edge. And they know like a flashing neon sign when one of your baby toes is even close to off the edge. Because that's their time. They've got the door open and they're going to go in. So you don't need to allow that. You don't need to keep repeating that. Okay? Now, here's what happens when teenagers don't get what they want the first time. First of all, they generally react. Yeah, okay, they're allowed to be angry at your no. So be empathetic, validate what they wanted and their need for autonomy, and perhaps other ways you can help them find that. Okay? That's cool. Doesn't mean you need to change your boundary. Doesn't mean you made a bad decision. Doesn't mean you're a bad parent. Stop it. If you want to go back and rethink about your boundary, you do it, but not with your teenager. Go do it somewhere else, then come back, okay? Now, if they don't get what they want the first time, this is where they start to do the bargaining and begging. So they're going to start bargaining with you. This is only a one-time thing. My friends are going out to this one party one time. It's only once. So if you just let me go this one time, I'll do XYZ. Right? Yeah. Yes, I'll go do. So you get the bargaining. So the please, pretty please, relentlessness turns into bargaining. And this is where so many parents get caught up, because again, you are trying to find your own authentic line somewhere between being the authoritarian brick wall and being the passive, permissive, or pushover parent. And you know there's a middle ground, but you haven't found it because you haven't talked Anyway, the proven strategies to staying in the middle, where you connect and build mutual respect without giving up your parental authority, but also not needing to hammer your kid over the head with it. It's this constant 180, and it's dizzy making, and it's confusing for your teenager too, because they get confused. They don't know when you are creating an uncertain ground, because they don't know if you're the brick wall this time, or if they're relentless and they can push you back this time. They don't know. So they're going to always go, to relentless, and now you've got more conflict, more arguing, more yelling, slamming doors, less conversation, no communication. Now you don't have connection, and trust and respect is lowered. And I don't want that for you, okay? So when they move to the begging and the bartering, it doesn't mean, again, you need to accept any of it. Surprise! Surprise! Right? Maybe something they're offering is of value. Like, okay, they're willing to give something in order to get something. Now, I don't recommend that as a whole, as a transactional relationship. I'm saying they're willing to increase respect or offer you some kind of respect, and they're asking for autonomy and respect and to be trusted, which is really hard as a parent. But these begging and bartering conversations are just another way of wearing you down. And of course, it's always a one-time thing and it will never be forever. And it's just this one time and they're going to get like all the things, right? Even if you do, and I'm not saying don't accept any of their barter offers. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if you do accept a barter offer, it feels right for you, and then you give your part, and your teenager doesn't complete their part, then you stop doing the begging and bartering. I'm not saying you turn into a brick wall. I'm saying that the consequence of their not following through with the bartering, because it was really just so they could get what they wanted, is that you're not going to do that next time. Because like, you want me to trust you, but then you offered this one thing and you promised you would do it and then you didn't. So like, I feel a little bit duped, feeling a little bit like taken for granted, so if you keep doing this, what your teenager learns, and this is where a lot of parents go to, is they believe the begging and bartering, which doesn't happen. But then you keep giving in. You keep giving in to what they want. And so now the behavior they've learned is not only relentless, but they've learned to beg and barter with you because they're going to get what they want anyway, but they never have to deliver. That is not teaching accountability. It is not increasing respect. They don't respect you. It lowers their respect for you because they know all they need to do is throw a bunch of words at you and they'll get what they want. That's not increasing respect. You're lowering respect for yourself, my sweet friend. So stop that. Stop that nonsense, okay? The last tip I want to say here is that I do want you to have these open conversations with your teen. Again, I do want you to have them, okay? But you need to understand that hearing your teenager's wants and needs and desires isn't always, especially in the moment, the best time to change your mind, if you change your mind, okay? You are not a better parent for listening to an hour and a half barrage of what your teenager has about why your boundary sucks or your rule sucks and that you need to change it. When is it okay for someone to wear you down for an hour and a half? When did that become okay? Put on your parenting pants, stand up, dust yourself off, and that's a hell no. You can love your teenager and not listen to that. You got to draw the line before you ever you got to stop it. You got to stop teaching them that this kind of behavior is going to work, okay? That is the problem in the first place. Yes, invite your teenager to tell you what's important about what they want. Yes, invite them to offer suggestions on how to make this work. Sure. And don't make the decision in the moment. Because what ends up happening too is that they also, when the please doesn't work, and then the begging and bartering doesn't work, is now they get real pissy. Because they still don't want what they want. They don't have what they want, but you haven't put a stop to this behavior. Now you're going to get the name calling, the rude, spicy talk. You're going to get the pushing of why, but why? Why is that important to you? Why won't it work? Why? They become like a toddler again. Because you have allowed this incessant conversation to go on. And I'm going to tell you right now, because a lot of parents get back on their heels again, and now you're off balance. You are not on trial. You are not on trial here. I do not recommend ever saying because I said so. Please don't do that, okay? And there will be times where it is difficult for you to put into words why a boundary is important to you. And yes, I would like you to be curious with yourself. Why is this boundary important to me? but not with your teenager. Outside of that, is it because it's what I learned? Is it a story I have? It's the way my parents treated me? Is it like, does it actually make sense? Ask yourself. But it doesn't mean that, because when they start coming at you and they're like, why, there's going to be times where you will say, I have really been curious with myself and tried to come up with the why. And unfortunately, in this situation, I don't have something that might make sense to you. There is something about this that doesn't just feel risky to me. Like as in being a parent of a teen, which is just plain risky and anxiety provoking all the time because they're constantly pushing for greater levels of autonomy and freedom and they want to know that you trust them. And you're like, but I don't know if I trust you and I'm anxious. And is this really a good choice? Like aside from all that, okay, normal parenting stuff, there's this just doesn't feel in alignment with my values. It just does not align with my values. And I'm sorry, I don't have a more articulate reason. There's something in me this does not feel right. And they're going to want to have a discussion with you about it. Shocker. So they can get you off ground again. Stop it. You don't need to. You can say, I'm sorry that it isn't more, I can't make it make more sense. This is my boundary. Now, you can also say, bonus points, we have had this discussion, okay? Now, I don't recommend saying, I don't want to talk about this again, like you're not allowed to ask again, because what you're doing is you're shutting down that connection, which is the greatest influence, and that your teenager would bring their wants and desires to you in order to beg and plead and ask, instead of just going to do it anyway, hiding it and lying, okay? So we don't want that. But what you can say is when they bring it to you, you got to have a time limit. Sweet Jesus, you got to have a time limit. Okay? And in that time, you just keep empathizing and validating what they want, why it's important, because it's true for them, even though it sucks for them that you're not going to change their mind. Okay? So holding your ground with your teenager and your boundaries doesn't have to be this hard. It becomes harder for the reasons I've just said. You either think you need to play brick wall. That will become harder because your teenager doesn't feel heard and seen in their need for autonomy, and they're not connecting with you. So it's about control. The second is because that hasn't worked, so you're trying to be nice and create something different and more of an open relationship, and now you're just off ground all the time, so they end up getting what they want, and you feel disrespected because you're just trying to have connection over control, but neither one is balanced. Set your boundaries. Do not have negotiations that last more than 5 minutes. Do not change your mind in front of your teen. Go take a 5-minute breather, even if you need, or ask whatever party's involved and come back to them and give them whatever answer, kindly, compassionately, and firmly. And be very aware that there is actually a middle ground. It is science-backed, it is research-based, and it is what I call respectful parenting. It's right in the middle. So if this is an issue and your teenager is relentless and you're stuck between these swinging back and forth, and now there's a pattern that's been set up and you don't know how to get out of it, or you see your teenager heading into this pattern, once I get this posted, I want you to type boundaries in the comments. Once I get it posted, give me a sec. Because once the live is over, and I will send you the link for my free training with my framework on how to end these patterns, which I learned myself the hard way through science and raising 2 kids and helping thousands of parents over 18 years to set up a healthy, compassionate, and firm line with their boundaries while still connecting with their teen, not needing to be the brick wall nor the bestie. I want you to type boundaries in the comments, and I will get you the link for my free training, which has my 3-step framework and how with the insight so you can start applying that and end this exhausting cycle. But but still be rebuilding respect, which is the whole point of boundaries in the first place. All right, thank you so much for joining me. I will see you next week right here, same time, same place, talking all about parenting teens. If you're on Instagram, I would love a follow. If you're on YouTube, I would love a subscribe. Thanks everybody for being here. Bye.